What up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the 5 best mirrorless cameras for under $1,000. Let's get into it. All right, so I'm actually ranking these cameras in order of my preference, but really you guys should be focused on what you guys are really gonna be shooting. And that's the main thing you should be thinking about, is what it is I'm using this tool for, because that's all cameras are tools. I know you hear that, blah, blah, blah. Up first is the OMD Mark III, and I actually really love this camera at $999. It's actually at the very top of my price point that I'm setting for this. So you really gotta love it for paying that kind of price. So let's talk about it a little bit. It's the OMD Mark III. It's a micro four thirds camera, so you guys should do some research on that. But that means it's a teeny tiny, it's a very small little sensor, but it has a huge range of lineup of lenses available. So lenses are cheap, they're readily available, there's a huge selection, so that's a nice plus for micro four thirds. Aesthetically, it's a gorgeous camera. I really like the way it looks. It's got this old school look to it. It's got some nice dials up top that really give it a nice analog feel. It's got these really nice dials here for changing shutter and aperture on the fly. I like that. I really like this chunky grip up front. It feels really good in your hands. I also like this thumb grip up back. So I'd say overall, this is probably ergonomically the best camera and it feels the best in your hands. I really like the OMD line of cameras for that reason. I also like this nice viewfinder in back. The electronic viewfinder on these are superb, and it's got a fully articulating screen, so flip out screen, that's really nice. The downfalls are the micro four thirds sensor don't do well in low light. It's a small sensor, so you have a 2x crop, and you also have a little bit of difficulty shooting shallow depth of field. So those are some issues. Overall, Olympus does a really good job, really nice in-body stabilization. I really like that. The colors are okay. It does have OM log, which is a log profile. So if you're gonna be shooting 4K, you can shoot that flat, get as much data out of it as you can and color correct in post. The autofocus, not as good as Sony and Canon, but it's still decent. This is superb, the 5-axis sensor shift image stabilization. I really like it. It adds about 6.5 stops and really reduces shake on the video, and just a really nice feature. Body design, we talked about that. Shooting modes. Overall battery life is good. The flip out screen is really nice. Viewfinder is good and ergonomics are good. A little bit more on the photo side for this camera, I would say, if you're more of a photographer than a videographer, and just a videographer for fun or just getting into it, this is a great camera for you. But at $999, we have a lot of different options. So let's get into the next. Next is actually a Canon, and as a Sony fanboy, it hurts me to put this on this list, but it's a great little camera. It's the EOS Mark VI Mark II, not Mark VI, M6 Mark II. They did a really great job upgrading this camera over the first generation. I did not like the first generation, it had a lot of issues, but this camera really takes care of a few of those. Let's talk about ergonomics first. The body design is really nice, pretty basic. It's almost like a point and shoot. Little tiny grip up front. No viewfinder, no front dial, although this may be a dial on here. This is a dial up front with a shutter button around it. A big flaw to this camera is that there's gonna be no viewfinder. So if you're a photographer at heart and you're an old school photographer where you need a viewfinder, this may not be the camera for you. It's a screen only with an additional viewfinder that goes in the hot shoe, which I don't personally like. It's chunky. And just, I don't really like it. APS-C size sensor and a 34 megapixel, so that's a pretty good size sensor, putting out decent data. It is a really nice sensor. I've shot on the Mark I, and Canon's putting out really, really beautiful colors. I mean, the color science can't be beat. The skin tones are superb. So if you're a YouTuber or something that's shooting a lot of people, this camera could be for you because the colors are really, really nice. Shooting 14 frames per second, which is beautiful. 23 frames per sec, 23 frames buffer for RAW, 54 frames JPEG. That's on the lower side, so that's a bit concerning. 30 frames per second at 18 megapixels. So if you drop the resolution, you could shoot a little bit more frames per second. Kind of a weird feature. Talk about video, this is kind of a jack of all trades type of camera. It shoots okay video and nice photography, but wouldn't be my first choice, and I'll tell you why. The image stabilization is electronic in this camera, so the more image stabilization you give, the more crop you get. And you're already at a 1.6 crop because it's a crop sensor body. So if you really want a wide angle shot, even a wide lens with the image stabilization on, it's gonna crop down. So that's kind of an issue. Also, I I hate the slow motion on this. The slow motion has no autofocus, and it really reduces some of the controls and manual control options for that. So I don't like this camera for the 1080-120 at all. 8-bit 4224 4K is actually nice. Again, we talk about the autofocus system in Canon is superb with dual pixel autofocus. It's really, really good, on par. Not quite as good as Sony, but it's right there. Overall, this is a great little camera, and for the price at $799 body only, it's a good option. I would definitely take a look at it, but you really need to like the mirrorless lineup for Canon, because the glass is specific to these. They can't transfer over to other Canon bodies. So if you're going to be growing into the Canon lineup, you're a little bit limited with these tiny mirrorless sensors because they have specific, I think they're called EFS lenses. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The Fujifilm X-T30. Now, I actually am a huge Fuji fanboy. I owned Fuji before, and I just really like them. They're durable, they're reliable, they're good value. As a photographer, they're excellent. They put out really, really beautiful colors. Now, some people don't like them. I'm in love with them. I think Fuji puts out some of the most beautiful images straight out of body, and the colors are really, I don't know why I did that. Ergonomics of it are really nice, kind of that old school feel. Again, really a beautiful looking camera. Nice viewfinder, nice dials front and back, which I really love. Analog dials up top to change some of your adjustments. A lot of buttons to program. Just overall, a really good full-featured body with a really nice ergonomics, which I like. $899 is a good price point for that. Let's get into some of the specifics. 26.1 megapixel APS-C X-Trans CMOS 4 sensor. The sensor is outstanding. Puts out really high-quality images and video. I really like it. 2.3 million dot electronic viewfinder, which is a huge plus. Really like that as well. The X-T30 is a really nice camera because of the lens lineup. I like that if you're going to get into Fuji at a lower price point, you can get a cheaper one. But if you're going to get into the Fuji crop sensor bodies, the nice thing is they have professional level crop sensor bodies. So you could start buying your glass now, and it'll work all the way up the line if you choose to upgrade your body later on. That's a huge plus. That's something that with that Canon M6, you won't have that option because you'll need to sell your glass if you choose to move on to a different system. Fuji has the same mounting points and the same system throughout. So that's a really nice plus. All right, let's talk about 8 frames per second, not the fastest, 90 frames for JPEG and only 18 frames RAW. So this isn't the fastest sports camera shooting type of camera for you. Low light performance is pretty good with the crop sensor. Video recording, a flaw with this is the record limit. The record limit here is only 10 minutes and 59 seconds, which is a weird timing in 4K. So that's a problem. If you're shooting YouTube tutorials like this one, or you're shooting some other client work, you're gonna have to reset every 10 minutes. So I don't like that, something to keep in mind. So overall, I would say this is more tailored to photography than videography. So that is something to keep in mind. But as a photography specific camera, outstanding choice for that $899 price point. And the glass is really nice with Fuji, so that's also something that you should think about. Moving on, we go to the A6400. Now, I actually owned this camera, so I'm a little bit biased to it, so keep that in mind. I'm a Sony fanboy. But at $898 with the kit lens, so body only, we're talking $798. Excellent price point. 24 megapixel APS-C sensor. Now, the sensor is a flaw. It is an old sensor, and it's actually the reason I ended up selling the camera because the video was just bugging me. It's an older sensor, and it's got some video issues. It's got chromatic aberration, and it's got horrible rolling shutter. So when you move the camera left to right, you see your lines going like this, and it makes a little jello-y look. I hated it. It really bothered me. Also, no in-body image stabilization also bothered me. The flip-up screen also bothered me. It's not a fully articulating swing-out screen, which Sony needs to get on. But I'd say for video, this is actually one of the most serious video cameras in this lineup. I've seen some people like Becky and Chris, their YouTube channel, they shot a whole like documentary cinematography, beautiful looking video on this camera because the 1080-120 is superb. The 4K is really beautiful. It's just if you're shooting a lot of moving subjects and moving objects, that's when you run into issues. But if you could put it on a gimbal or you're shooting locked off shots like studio, YouTube stuff, this camera is for you. It's really, really great at video. Image quality is excellent. I mean, it's the same as the 6300. It's the same sensor, so you're gonna get some nice images. A really big selling point for this Sony is actually the autofocus system. It's the best in the lineup. It's the best on the market. The real-time eye tracking autofocus, it doesn't miss. It just is accurate. It's great for photography. It's great for videography. It's the best on the market today. So that's a big plus as a beginner or an advanced. Some of the downfalls to it, the old sensor, we talked about that. No in-body image stabilization, we talked about that. I had no overheating issues, but some people do talk about it having some overheating issues. Some of the other issues with this camera to think about are the battery life is horrendous and the menu system sucks. If you want a full review on this, check out my video there. But at $798, I still recommend this camera. It's outstanding. Also has log profiles. So you have S-Log2, S-Log3, H-Log Gamma. Some of these other cameras do not. And my winner for my top recommended camera under $1,000 that is mirrorless is actually the Canon. This is a sleeper camera. Not many people talk about this, and I think it's the best value on the market right now. At $899, the Canon EOS RP is the buy, and that's from a Sony fanboy, so take that. At $899, this is the camera. First of all, it's the only camera in this whole group that is full frame. So with full frame, you're gonna get better image quality, better video quality, lower grain, lower low light, better low light performance, and better shallower depth of field for that beautiful bokeh look. So if you're shooting portraits and stills and people and you want that beautiful bokeh or landscape or low light, I mean, this is the camera. Go full frame. Get the biggest possible sensor that you can for the cheapest possible price. EOS RP is that camera. So let's get into some of the quality, some of the things I really love about this camera. Full frame 1x crop, so you can get those nice wide shots. You can get a nice wide angle on that. Great for YouTube studios. Great for landscape photography. That's a nice plus. So coming down here, it actually has no in-body image stabilization, but it has a digital stabilization similar to the Mark VI. So you will get a little bit of a crop on that, but it does work well for video only. Sensor is a 27 megapixel, beautiful full frame sensor. Puts out, again, perfect color science, the best skin tones out of any of these cameras. Canon really nails their colors. It does a really good job. I really love it for that. You do lack some of the high-end video capabilities that the Canon EOS R come with, but again, you can't really compare that camera because at $899, it's not in the same class point. So it does shoot 4K at 24, which is kind of all you need. It shoots 1080 at 60 frames per second, which is pretty nice. It also has dual pixel autofocus, which is beautiful. The autofocus, like the other Canon autofocus systems, doesn't miss. It's very fast and accurate. Some of the issues that it has, I mean, it doesn't have some of the log profiles and some of the stabilization and other high-end features that the EOS are, but you can't compare that camera. Battery life is decent. Those that are coming out of this are really nice. A lot of data to work with being a full frame. So to summarize why I chose this as the best sub $1,000 mirrorless camera is because it's got good autofocus. It shoots beautiful 4K. It's a full frame. The colors are awesome. The photography that's coming out of the stills that are coming out of it are just beautiful. You can get a nice wide lens on that for landscape and portraits. You can get a nice shallow depth of field. So overall, this is your camera. One thing to remember though, that the glass for this, it's full frame glass. So it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit more expensive, and overall your kit's gonna be a little bit larger than some of the other cameras in the lineup that I chose. But for me and for what I'm gonna recommend to you guys is the EOS RP at $899 is the camera. But I do wanna stress that when you're making your choice in this mirrorless lineup and you're choosing which camera to go with, think about the future and think about what you guys wanna shoot. So what is it that you guys are shooting? Is it landscapes? Is it video? Is it photo? All those things should factor into your decision. Also, where do you wanna grow? Like, do you wanna be a wedding photographer like me? Do you want to be a landscape photographer? Do you want to stick in a system? Right now, Sony and Canon are the best in the market for video. So if you're a video specific guy, you might want to stay in those systems. That all factors into which system you get and what lenses you start investing in. Because as much as I love all these bodies, lenses are more important than bodies. All right, guys, and that's all I got for my top 5 sub $1,000 mirrorless cameras. If you enjoyed this video, please hit me with a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think and make sure you subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.